Well, here we are again, and here's the same question again. How are things with your soul? It's the question we've been asking ourselves again and again each week in this sermon series. How are things with your soul? And I've been loving the responses that I'm getting and the questions, the interactions I'm getting with people because it's working. And it's so great, and I'm loving this, that we're really invested in asking this of ourselves and doing this. And I've also found that as I have done this, as you have done this, that we all have these questions and we all have these little ahas and these realizations. And I don't know about you, but as I've asked you, I'm also asking myself every day, how are things with, well, not every day, I just lied. God didn't strike me dead. But most of my days in preaching this sermon series, I've been asking myself, how are things with my soul? And as I've been reflecting and doing this, I've realized that sometimes my soul is singing and it's really good. Some days it's just blah. And some days it's a struggle where I'm just trying to put one foot in front of the other until that day ends. But asking myself in the midst of the good and the bad days, how are things with my soul? I've realized that that helps me in my life to make more days better and experience less and tiresome days. And also as I've realized and reflected on this, that when we ask ourselves and ask each other of this, it's not just doing something that we do as Methodists, because remember we said that at Methodist, at its height, it was the best, and we grew very well because we would ask this of each other in these small groups. And asking this not out of tradition, but out of real questioning, asking this of ourselves and others. Well, in doing this, we are living out the greatest commandment. The greatest commandment that God says to us, both in the Old Testament and Jesus says in the New Testament, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your might, and your neighbor as yourself. When we ask this of ourselves and of our neighbors, really genuinely asking this, well, we're loving them. We're concerned about them, not just their aches and pains and their voting preferences, but what's really going on inside of someone. That is showing true love, true compassion, true concern. And when we ask this of ourselves, we're showing ourselves that we love ourselves because we dare to ask us this question. And in doing this and doing this soul work, well, then we just can't help. It's an outflow of loving God with all our heart, mind, body, and soul. So how are things with your soul? We're also asking this question because we're in a sermon series about the stages of faith, about the condition of our soul. And the hope and the question, the hope and the intention of this sermon series is that in asking ourselves, how are things with our soul, asking others, that we're starting to reflect on our faith and we reflect where we are in our faith, because we all have stages of faith in our faith development. And these stages of faith are very similar to how we develop as human beings. They're like on a parallel, they can be on a parallel track. Just like we develop and we grow and we change from being birthed by our moms all the way through adolescence, through the teenage years, early adult years, when your prefrontal cortex is being developed, into the mid-age until later on in life. We all go through these developments. But unlike that human development that we have no choice, I guess, but to develop with age, because the time doesn't stop for any of us, right? Time keeps on going. We grow no matter, we have birthdays no matter how many times we don't want to have a birthday. We can't help that growth, but we can help our spiritual growth. We can also be stunted in our spiritual growth. And we can also go backwards in our spiritual growth. And so as we've been looking at these parallels of human development and faith development, we're asking ourselves, how are things with our soul? But also asking, where are we in our faith walk? What stage are we in? And if we find ourselves not in the stage where we really want to be, well then, we need to do that work. We need to do that soul work. And that's what we've been doing. And we've also been looking at the life of Abraham and Sarah in the Old Testament and looking at his faith development and what was going on in his life and the things that he was dealing with and the questions and the working ons that he was having to deal with, and looking at his life and his example of how to grow in our faith. And so we're here today in this stage of faith. It's called the conjunctive stage. And when I think of this, I think of conjunctivitis. And I really don't know what it means. I just know you don't want it, right? But I think conjunctive faith. And what this is like a conjunction that joins two parts of a sentence. It's like a both and an and. It's this and that. It's both this and it's both that. And this stage, this conjunctive stage in our human development is like the midlife. Those people in their 40s and 50s. Like me, your pastor, this stage in life. And if you can remember this stage, this is the stage where you've had a lot of life experiences. You've gone through adolescence, you've gone through puberty, you've gone through the heck that is middle school. Was middle school tough when you guys were going to middle school? Was high school tough? No? Man, you guys had it easy. Man, that was tough, middle school, when you're going through all that puberty and all of those awkward moments, and then high school, those times were tough, and then you get into wanting to be adult, but really not having that adult behavior, and then you get into your 20s and you start your career, you might start a family, and you're going through all of this. You have a lot of successes, you have a lot of failures, you have a lot of embarrassing moments, you have a lot of great moments, you have promotions, you have demotions, you have kids, and you have that struggle, you have that relationship that goes through ebbs and flows. And then by this stage, about that midlife into your 40s or 50s, you start having, typically you have teenagers. And teenagers have a way of humbling their parents. Can I get an amen on that one? And so here you are in this stage, this midlife stage, and you've had all of these experiences in life, and you're looking back and you're addressing all of those good things and your bad things. You have this stage of adulthood in the midlife that I'm talking about is a reflective stage, where you start looking back and analyzing your life. The good, the bad, and the ugly. You're reflecting on that, looking at your mistakes, looking at your successes, looking at what brings you joy, what sucks the life out of you. And one of the things that I've done, and because I'm right here in this stage, is looking at what happens to us as humans when we hit about the 50-year mark. I'm 49, almost 50, but right here in this time of your life, I didn't know this until I read this, but this is the time where you start forming maybe a new identity, but whatever is formulating, whatever is being developed, your mindset, your beliefs, your personality, whatever that is being developed right here in this stage, this mindset, this set of beliefs, this ethos of life, well, this carries you until you meet your Maker. And so we have this intersection here, this pivotal moment where we can form almost a new identity, a new way of thinking and believing. But it's also, this new way is based on all your past. And I've done this personally in my life. I've had to look and analyze all the wonderful things, all the difficult things, all the challenges, all the things that I've done to myself. And that's usually what I'm reflecting on, the things that I've done to myself. Anybody else in the same boat with me? About 50, you've done that? And I realize that I don't want to live like this. I don't want to have this state of being or this mindset. And so I've had to do the difficult job in looking at relationships and the toxic relationships. I've had to say, I don't want this anymore. I want something new, something better, something less toxic for me in my life. I also did not like being 260 pounds with 2 bulging discs and chronic pain every day. And so that's why I set a goal to do my triathlon, to lose that weight, because guess who put that weight on big old Pastor Brandon? It wasn't my wife's cooking. It wasn't my kids. It was me and how I handled stress, how I handled life, what I chose to put in my body. And so right here in this stage of life, I've been reflective. I said, I'm going to make a change. I want to have a different mindset. I want to have a different way of being. So I'm making that change because I want a better version of Brandon that takes me until I meet my Maker. And so this is that stage of human development, that midlife crisis, that 40s and 50s. That stage where we have a reflectiveness in the things that we do and want to be. And this is a stage that's really characterized in paradoxes. And this is the stage in life where we recognize and realize that there are just paradoxes in life. There are things that just don't make sense. It's just the way they are. And that we are able to understand that there are paradoxes because of all of these experiences and looking back and being honest with what we have experienced and done. And I'm really glad for Google. I'm glad we've come there, because if I had to think of all these paradoxes this week, it'd have been forever. I'd probably been bald. So I just did a couple Google, and I got some great paradoxes here that the guys are going to put up for me. Sometimes working longer can result in getting less done. Can I get an amen on that one? But in our 20s and 30s, we didn't have that mindset, did we? We just worked, got all the things done, and then I found myself going, man, I've done all this work, looking back and going, what have I done? Nothing. Sometimes working harder and longer means getting less done. This next one I really like. You must fail more to ultimately succeed more. That's a head scratcher, isn't it? You have to fail more to ultimately succeed more, as failure is a necessary part of growth and learning. My greatest life lessons are a result of me failing, and failing hard. Maybe we should be very weary of those who never make a mistake. Everything they do is perfect and good and great. They don't understand this paradox. And this next one I think is really appropriate for us, people of faith, because sometimes we put people of faith too much on a pedestal. But another paradox is sometimes really good people can make very bad decisions. You know anybody like that? Have you done anything like that? That person you think is strong and solid and so far advanced in their faith, and then something in life happens and they make a decision that you're like, what? How? How could this? Sometimes really good people make very bad decisions. It's just part of life. It's a paradox. And in this stage of our human development, we come to understand that and realize that. And then we also see this in this stage, this conjunctive stage in faith. It's a stage in faith where we have gone through all of these experiences. Remember the stages 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 about how we're identified with a certain faith. We grew up in a certain church, a certain way of doing things, and we thought this was the right way. And then we try to start going, realizing, oh, there's a different way of doing something. And then we try to do that different way, and then we're like, oh, I don't like that different way. And then we all of a sudden get accustomed to being in different things and realize the value of different things. And then we start having more relationships. And then we get to this stage in faith. And this stage in faith is really to mark that we really see that there are a lot of paradoxes in life, but there's also a multidimensional aspect to faith. There's a multi-dimensional aspect of faith. And then also in this stage of faith, we're able to really embrace the mysteries of our faith. This stage of faith is realizing that there are so many different ways to express our faith. That we don't need to be scared of how somebody does that expresses their faith. That we say, yeah, we like to sing hymns. We like to sing out of the red hymnal book. We love to stand while we sing. We love all of this pomp and circumstance. But yet, we can also value contemporary music with people waving their hands and singing very loud with smokes and bells and whistles. We can realize that there are people that are really new in their faith and they're very excited and they're gung-ho. And that's not a threat to us, but that's a great thing because they're really trying to work out their faith. That some people like to preach with notes. Some people don't preach with notes. Some people like to walk around on the stage and some people don't. Some people enjoy the meditative part and some people enjoy the sermon part. Some people fall asleep during the sermon part and are awake for the singing part. And some people just come here to have a meal with God at communion. And some people come to church and they worship by serving others, by welcoming them, by preparing food for them, by service. And we realize that this diversity, all of these things that are done differently, they're not just wrong, they're different expressions. It's the multidimensional aspect of being a Christian and worshiping with a bunch of different people who have different ideas, who have different tastes, who have different preferences. And the main thing, the most important thing is that we all come together in any way that we want, any way that is relevant and good for us. As long as we come here to worship this mysterious and loving God, the God we can't put in a box, the God whose ways are above our ways. This stage of faith is a lot like let go and let God. And as you let go, you're not trying to grab for control like you were before, but you truly let go. And this letting go gives you a joy, a freedom, and a peace, because you know what grounds you in your faith. You know what makes your soul sing. You know what makes your soul happy. You know what feeds your soul, and because you are grounded and because you are at peace, you can worship with all the different expressions that are out there. That's this stage of faith. Where are you? You know, most Christians are in stage 2 and stage 3, where you're scared of anything different because you think it's wrong. There is concern. There's concern for our nation. And believe me, I'm concerned as well. But I'm also maybe even more concerned about the state of our churches And it's not just Methodist churches. It's churches all around America. And I'm concerned because most Christians are in stage 2 and 3, and what I've realized is that most Christians, most parishioners, because they're in stage 2 and stage 3, they've not been able to embrace this paradox that we have as believers. And you know what this paradox is? The church exists solely. The church exists solely for those not already in church. The church, we here gathered together, we're here, we're in existence solely, only because for the care and the welfare for those not here with us. To be the church means to go outside of these walls, to invite people in, to bring them in all their diversity and everything and all their different tastes and flavors, to bring them in so that they can encounter this mysterious and wonderful, loving God that we all know. That's our job. And what happens is we get caught up in these petty little stupid fights about how to worship right, how to do church right, because we're threatened of anything different. And what it has resulted in is most churches becoming one-generational churches. Only one generation of people are attending church. And in most churches, it's just like you, baby boomers. If you have a home church outside of Sun City, we are in baby boomer nation, right? Here in Sun City, you can't live here unless you are a boomer, basically, right? Although Gen X is slowly coming in. Beware. Nobody sees us coming. Get it? Gen X, the forgotten, that was a good joke right there. But if you go home to your home church, where you probably grew up with all the generations, where there are infants, youth group, young people bringing their infants there, old people, your age, all these different generations. I bet you if you go back to your home church, most of us in this place would say, yes, my home church once was multi-generational, and now one generation. It's a result in us and our faith not working, not developing, and not being the church. And I get that it's a scary thing. I get it. Difference can be a threat. Growth can be a challenge and a pain. I'm experiencing that right now in my life. But it's worth it. It's amazing when we grow in our faith. And we see that in the life of Abraham and Sarah. And we see this point that this development in their faith, that they have this conjunctive faith, they have this both and not an either or. They realize that faith is a gray thing. Yes, we have these experiences that tell us in life these things are possible, but yet when God is involved, when we have life and God involved, amazing and wild and crazy things can happen. And so here in today's story, we have Abraham and Isaac and the birth of Isaac. And here is Sarah at 90 years old, giving birth and nursing a child. Now, as I've been preaching about 90-year-old women, we've had 2 90-year-old celebrations, right? So can you imagine Claren being pregnant? Can you imagine Claren nursing a child? Having to have a nursing station for Claren in the back? Now that would make the Independent, wouldn't it? 90-year-old at Lakeview is nursing a child and they're in a brand new nursing facility. That's laughable, isn't it? It's crazy. But this is the text. This is Abraham and Sarah. This is what they've been working for, to have this conjunctive faith. That yes, this is possible. Yes, this doesn't seem right, but it's happening. And we're laughing about it. I love what Sarah says. Like, anybody who hears this would be just like you. And we said, can you imagine Claren having a baby? That anybody who hears this would be laughing, and yet here they are. And there's this amazing thing that's happening as Abraham is circumcising Isaac, and then as he's weaned, he has this great celebration. You know, during that time, infant mortality rate was super, super high. I remember studying Greek in my undergrad about how that they called kids in the Greek culture, they called kids teknon, which is Greek for kid. And they would call them kid till they're about 5, because that's when they're like, okay, he or she has gone through all the tests and the trials, so we're going to name him because they're going to live, and they didn't want to get attached to their child because of how high the infancy death rate was. And so here is Abraham. And I'm sure people were sitting there going, oh my gosh, what is the health condition of this child being born from a 90-year-old? I mean, weren't you thinking that when you started wondering if Claren could have a baby? Would this child even survive the birth? How long would this child last? And so here, after 8 days, they're circumcised. Abraham's like, yeah, it's going to go through all the trauma to have this circumcision, because I believe he's going to be a healthy, well child, because God said he's going to birth. Out of this child is going to be one many nations. And then when he's weaned, he not only circumcises him on the 8th day, but he also gives him a name. Gives him the name Isaac, which means he laughs, because everything that's happening to him is super laughable, right? Gives him a name, and to give him a name was giving them the essence, a purpose of who they are in their life. And he says, this is going to be an essence. This is going to be who he is for the rest of his life. He's going to make it. And then when he's weaned, and he throws a big feast and a celebration, because yes, this child is strong, alive. This child is the promise of God to a 90 and 100-year-old. And this promise is full of life and vitality. And we're going to celebrate, and we're going to laugh, and we're going to have fun. And I found this picture of what I think they would look like today. Don't you love that? Do you see the strength? Do you see the vitality? Do you see the pure joy and happiness and peace? And this couple, who maybe we have a mindset that can't have strength, joy, and peace like this at that age. This is this stage in faith where we can really laugh and have peace and joy in our lives. Because we've realized, yes, this world has these certain conditions. Yes, our collective experience says this can happen and that will never happen. But with God in my life, and my faith and trust and hope in this mysterious and loving God, well, the impossible can actually be impossible, can be done, can be possible. Because God is God and can do these amazing things, I can be at peace. I can be grounded. Because God is amazing. So may we continue to ask ourselves, how are things with my soul? And may we be committed to continually grow in our love, service, and in pursuit of this wonderful, mysterious, loving God, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Amen.